Welcome back. My name is Greg Massey, and this is episode 2 of The Color of Air, a podcast about the musical journey. As you're hearing this, we're up and running now on the web. You can find us at www.colorofair.com. Also, if you use iTunes to get your podcasts, like I do, please find us in the iTunes store. You can subscribe, rate, and review us. And pretty soon we should be available on Stitcher as well. And I want to thank those of you who took the time to listen to the first episode and send in some feedback. I appreciate the comments, and it's encouraging to see that people were really getting into the spirit of what the podcast is trying to do by introducing an artist, playing some of their music, and then getting into an in-depth discussion. Like I've said before, and I'll probably say again, this podcast is really a work in progress. You know, I'm still learning how to record things better, how to edit things better. I'm experimenting with the theme song a little bit. It's a little shorter this week. You know, just trying to get better at what I do. And one thing I learned the hard way is when I was first recording the interviews in May and early June, there was a couple days where I scheduled interviews back to back. And the problem with that, as I found, is that I don't give my brain enough time to relax between interviews. So the first interview, I'm dynamic, I'm out there, and, you know, on point. But then the second interview, because it hasn't had a chance to, you know, reset the battery, so to speak, the brain's a little sluggish. I struggle to get questions out, and, you know, it doesn't make for the greatest of interviews, which is a shame because the people involved with those interviews are really awesome and, you know, super nice and super cool. And, you know, I feel bad that I wasn't as good of an interviewer on those particular cases. And this is one of them. This is an interview today with Kevin Hufnagel. Kevin Hufnagel is a guitar player. You may know him from his bands Dysrhythmia, Vaura, as well as he's got a couple solo records out now. And his most recent thing is that, you know, he and Colin Marston from Dysrhythmia joined Gorguts. Or as the folks in Worcester said when I saw them earlier this year, "Fucking Gorguts, kid!" And I've known Kevin for about 14 years. And he's really, besides just being a really cool dude, he's also one of my favorite guitar players. And, you know, someone who I would point to as being very inspirational to me, just based on the way he approaches the instrument. I mean, in Dysrhythmia, he never really lets loose with a lot of crazy solos. But in Gorguts and on the last Vaura release, you can hear that his soloing chops are amazing. But what really got me into Kevin as a player is the way he approaches the instrument. He uses a lot of alternate tunings. He uses a lot of capos. He does some prepared guitar stuff. As you'll hear in the interview, he's been writing a lot of 12-string electric stuff. And he even did an entire album of compositions on the ukulele, which don't sound like a ukulele, but sound more like classical guitar pieces or prepared guitar pieces. And, you know, he's just always approaching the instrument in some new and creative way. And that's really inspiring to me. So, but before we get on to the rest of the interview, a few plugs, as always. Again, you can find us at www.colorofair.com. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/colorofairpodcast. You can follow us on Twitter at The Color of Air. And if you have any questions, comments, or just want to interact with the podcast, please send us an email at colorofairpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And also, if you're interested in my music, you can find it at www.retconrecordings.com, where you can find the first 2 Battle Set releases, and you can stream and buy them. So, before we get into the interview, let's play a little of Dysrhythmia. This is a track from their most recent album, Test of Submission. This song is called The Line Always Snaps.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for taking time out, and I'm sorry it took a little longer to get here than I
Oh,
thought.
that's no problem.
Uh, so how you been doing?
Good. Enjoying being home for a few weeks before being busy again.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have a pretty full tour schedule for this. Well, for the summer, right? Because you guys are doing.
And into the fall now too. It hasn't really been announced yet, but in November we're going to Japan and Australia and New Zealand too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
do you remember when it was just planning those 3-4 week Dysrhythmia tours?
Yeah.
And
What's funny is that we still do that, in between. Like Dysrhythmia is not going to Japan anytime soon,
yeah.
So that's what's kind of funny now. Especially to me and Colin playing in both bands, it's doing all this kind of surreal, like larger stuff with Gorguts, and then we're like, all right, now time for a Dysrhythmia tour. And it's just right back to kind of like playing small shows, and still playing basements and stuff. Yeah.
Well, it keeps you grounded.
Well, there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, so yeah, thank you for speaking for the podcast. Hopefully this will go over well.
Yeah.
Eh.
Right now I have you on speaker. Is it better if I put on headphones, or does that matter to you?
No, it doesn't. It sounds fine.
All right, good. Yeah, this is easier for me anyway.
Yeah, it sounds fine. So don't worry about it. I'm still messing with how to actually record calls on Skype, so it's dealing with different compression levels and everything. So it's still kind of a work in progress.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're only the third interview I've done, so
Well, I've only really ever done one like phone interview or whatever before. I did that one with George Lynch up for Invisible Oranges a couple years ago,
hmm
and that was super awkward because I didn't really. I wish I could have just done it on Skype or something like that, because I did it on my shitty cell phone, and I put them on speakerphone. And I had terrible reception in my apartment, and I just set up a mic and I just ran it into GarageBand. So I just, yeah, I interviewed him over on speakerphone on my cell phone, mic'd into GarageBand, and then transcribing that was hell later. And yeah, it was just weird because like I couldn't really understand them even during the interview, just because the reception was bad. And it was so funny because I think the whole time he was talking to me, he was driving around in his car with his wife, or maybe his wife was driving, but he was, in a car the whole time. And I don't know, it's kind of funny.
Well, it actually it's a good segue because so what I'm trying to do with the podcast or what I thought would be interesting is really just like talking about people's personal musical journeys and things like that.
Mm.
And and when you bring up George Lynch, I mean, uh, I actually was trying to bet if I could get this entire interview without actually mentioning Dawkins, but I don't think it's going to be possible.
Yeah.
But because you're kind of we're around the same age, so I mean you kind of came up in the whole like with the late '80s, the kind of the hair metal and that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And then into the '90s when all that went away.
Yeah.
Um, so that was that kind of your formative years.
Yeah. I mean, I discovered that stuff pretty young, because mainly, I've said this before, I guess, mainly from riding the school bus, in middle school in like third grade, in Jersey. This is around like 84, or something probably. The older kids in the back, they bus drivers never seem to have problems with them bringing, their radios on the bus and just blasting whatever, in the back of the bus. And that's how I discovered, at first Twisted Sister and Motley Crue and all that stuff,
hmm
And yeah, so it was through hearing it on the school bus that I first heard that music, and then just started. Then really quick, then very soon after that, I discovered that radio station WSOU
hmm
in Jersey, and that was just a great resource for me to discover new music. And I was watching a lot of MTV too at the time. I did a lot of searching on my own, actually pretty from right off the bat,
And when did you actually pick up the guitar?
When I was 12, I got an electric guitar for Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty much started taking lessons right away. My mom just signed me up, I think, without even asking me, But I didn't mind, But
Yeah.
I wanted to take lessons.
And so when you actually got the chance to interview, I don't know if I actually saw the interview you did with George Lynch. Was it was it mainly just about, or what was it about? Was it just
I had prepared this huge list of questions, probably like 16 to 20 questions, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think I only asked about 4 or 5 of the prepared questions that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because he just, it's like you prepare all these questions and then you start actually getting into a conversation and they say something and that makes you think of something else, but also he did a lot of talking,
Okay.
So he kind of went on so many tangents after just asking one question, that were interesting. So I just kind of let him talk, so
Yeah.
it was kind of funny when we were done. I looked at my list of questions like, wow, I didn't even get to like 1/4 of the questions I prepared,
Well, yeah, I know that I've because when I was in college and I did a metal radio show and I somehow convinced promotion companies to let me do interviews with people, which is funny because the radio station only reached about 100 feet outside of the
Yeah.
So, and I just remember just being horribly embarrassed the entire time. Like, why am I talking to you? I have no reason why, like I have no good questions, other than, hey, you remember when you made that really cool album?
Yeah.
So no, I've learned that at least with these interviews, I actually don't write out questions. I just kind of write out little like words, being like, oh, like for instance, on the page for you, I have alternate tunings because that's something I'm eventually going to talk to you about because I don't know, that's something I associate with you.
Yeah.
I also have ukulele written down, of course, but yeah. So did you do many bands? I don't think I've ever asked you this. I mean, did you do many bands when you were in high school, or was it mostly when you got to your college?
No, I had a band. I used to in 8th grade. My brother's like 3 or 4 years younger than me, had a drum set, and the two of us would jam, quote unquote. Like it was really terrible, but it was fun, just to kind of bash around in the basement and we would just jam on like Iron Man, but not even go into like the second part of the song, just play the first riff for an hour, it'd drive my mom insane. Like to this day, she hates that song, But then, yeah, in 9th grade, and when I entered high school, I met this really great guitar player who was a few years older than me, and pretty quickly, he lived in my neighborhood, and we got together and jammed, and we had a lot of similar tastes in music, and we formed a band, and found this really amazing drummer too. I kind of don't even remember how we found our drummer. And then like one of my really good friends played bass, and we spent like 3 years writing 4 or 5 songs, and never played a show, and then finally made a demo, and then broke up immediately afterwards. So it was also just a learning experience, but I really grew as a player during that time. Not only from playing with another great guitar player, but also that our drummer is really good, and I felt like that helped develop my playing a lot too.
Okay.
People that were better than me, was always, that's the way to get better,
Mm-hmm.
As long as you sort of hang at first, then you can really, accelerate after a while playing with people like that,
And now, was that more in a technical metal style, or
it wasn't like super tech, but it was we were super into Queensryche and Fates Warning and stuff. It was pretty prog metal,
Okay.
A lot of clean parts and then solos and yeah.
All right, that's cool.
All right, it was all right for the time.
Do you still have the demo?
Yeah. It's pretty terrible. I mean, it sounds awful. We didn't know the song, we knew what we were doing playing wise, but especially in the studio, like we didn't. The guitar tones are horrendous. It just sounds like shit. Really sounds like shit. I mean, I think somewhere probably I have rehearsal, like basement recordings that probably sound better than the studio demo we did.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, but
And so then you went to University of the Arts, correct?
Yeah.
In Philly.
uh,
And and I'm sure you've probably answered this a million times, but I don't know the answer. When did when did Dysrhythmia come together? Because were those guys also at University of the Arts?
they were actually. Well, backing up just a little bit, like the original bass player in Dysrhythmia, Clayton. Me and him actually after my high school metal band broke up around sometime late '93 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I had met Clayton. He had like kind of just transferred to my high school. And,
Oh, okay. I didn't know you met in high school.
Yeah, we met in high school, and at that time, viola was sort of his primary instrument, and I was super intrigued by that.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually formed a duo and made a demo. We had a project called Great Division Blue, and
Mm-hmm.
it was instrumental as well, but it was way more acoustic based and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just made one demo in '94, and then we kept trying to work on new stuff. We had all this kind of cool new material in the works, but then we never finished it. The project we kind of disbanded and stopped working musically for a while during our years in college.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was kind of strange. Then my senior year in college, I formed kind of like an avant-garde ensemble or something, for credit, and I asked Clayton to be part of it. But in that, he was primarily playing bass, and it kind of got me thinking. The ensemble wasn't really that great, But again, it was like a seed, like for starting Dysrhythmia. And when we were done with college, I was like, all right, let's find a really great drummer and let's just keep it a trio, And so Dysrhythmia was formed like right summer of 1998.
Okay.
But we didn't find Jeff until March '99, so it took us 6 months to find the right person.
Mm-hmm.
We auditioned a lot of other people during that time, but none of them. And a lot of them were really good players, but just didn't work out. But all for the better because we got lucky with Jeff.
Yeah.
He's still with us.
And well, so that actually is interesting. So you always intended Dysrhythmia to be a trio, then?
Always, yeah. I didn't want it to be any more than that.
Okay.
And I always wanted to be instrumental too. Never even thought about like adding a singer or anything.
Okay, yeah, I was curious about that.
Always found strange. I always, thought like, oh, you guys must have just not been able to find a singer, and that's why. That wasn't the case at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the one thing that I find interesting, I mean, well, at least from a guitar playing standpoint, is that the way the guitar parts for Dysrhythmia, I mean, they work in such a way that, I mean, they obviously are written with a trio in mind because, and without a singer, because you're able to occupy space and make these kind of interesting melodies and these interesting, things happening over the chords without actually having to have two guitar players or anything like that. And so was that kind of a stylistic thing? Was that a style that you kind of, when you were in college, did you kind of develop into that? Or was that kind of after you formed it as a trio, you kind of modded your style to fit it?
I think one thing that I kind of decided to early on starting the band too was that I didn't want it to be like a fusion band or anything like those sort of like Guitar Hero records from the 80s, even though I liked all that at the time. I didn't want it to be like a vehicle for me to just shred over changes or something. I think I was so kind of just turned off and disgusted by going to jazz school at that time, especially where it was just kind of all about just comping over changes or whatever they called it, blowing over changes, like I don't know. I was just so kind of like against all that stuff. So I wanted to kind of do the opposite and start a band where it was not about like how awesome you are as a soloist or something, you know what I mean? And have it be like everyone be like on equal like an equal level. You know what I mean? Like have everyone working together as and that's also why I wanted to keep it a trio. I thought 3 is like a perfect number. You know what I mean? Don't need any more than that. If we can make really interesting, engaging music with just 3 people, I think that will. That was like my idea from the get-go.
Okay.
And to have it be more based around things that were rhythmically and harmonically interesting rather than just simple rhythmic motifs and then just soloing over that and trading solos.
Well,
I didn't want to. I also didn't want to be called a fusion band either. People call us Steal It First.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many, especially in the late '90s too. I mean, that was when. I mean, obviously, Dream Theater were around. Not that they're necessarily a fusion band, but I mean, at least on the metal side, I mean, there's like Spiral Architect, and I felt like there was kind of a resurgence in some. That's when Meshuggah came back. Started around then too, and and the one thing, and this is just speaking from a personal interaction with your music, because I think I was always aware of Dysrhythmia. Because I think you posted on the same kind of prog metal message boards that I also was on, like the prog power or whatever, and so I was always kind of aware of you guys, but it really wasn't until, and I think you were the one, you reached out to Maudlin to do a gig, and we did a gig with you guys in Philly, and I remember I was like, oh yeah, I forget if I was talking to Toby. I was like, oh yeah, Dysrhythmia, I've heard about them. They're probably like a tech band. And I think the term tech or technical metal or whatever had like these kind of loaded ideas in my head. Kind of a so I was like, oh, I bet I know what they're going to sound like. And the point was, no, I had no idea. And I remember sitting there watching you guys play at UPenn. And was completely blown away because it wasn't just because you have it in your head that technical music is these kind of stuffy Berkeley types, but you guys really bring like a live energy to it, which I think was something that a lot of bands were missing.
Exactly, and that's why also I knew that being considered like a tech band and all that stuff, it has those there's those preconceived notions, the stereotypes about that kind of stuff, and I knew we weren't like that, so I kind of cringed when people would call us that. But you couldn't deny. I mean, we were trying, and we still are like trying to make the music interesting, which of course means it's going to be kind of complex sometimes, But I think a lot of that live energy too was just natural. That wasn't something that we like pre-planned or anything,
right?
Like, let's be super energetic. I mean, it just happened, and
well, it just I don't know, I found it to be like really, again, it transcended being just, oh, here's this instrumental, technical group. I'm like, this is just a really amazing live group who's doing really interesting music that I can actually listen to. And I was gonna say too, I mean, did you find on the first few releases you guys did, was there really kind of an intention to keep it to stuff that you could play live, to recreate live?
Yeah. We kind of thought like that for a long time, never wanted to really put things on the record that we couldn't do live. We sort of did on No Interference, the second one. It's interesting now that I mean, I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I remember there's quite a few moments on that record where there are like some extra layers, some second guitar parts that I couldn't do live, but they're pretty subtle, and I feel like when we played those songs without them, it wasn't that noticeable that it was missing. But I remember it being that being kind of a controversial thing, like that being kind of a thing of tension between me and Clayton at that time. Me wanting to put some extra stuff on the record when he was kind of against that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we kind of, and then with the next record, Pretest, that one's like, that's definitely the most stripped down record we ever made. That one was like pretty much, that was all completely live in the studio. I think there's only really one overdub on that record.
Oh wow!
And it's like it was just doubling apart to try to make it sound a little bit fuller. But that record, that's the most stripped down record. And then things kind of changed once Colin joined. He was more open to the idea of extra layers, and doubling parts. And making the record, and I was kind of more into that idea too by that point too. Like, I just remember a lot of people commenting, like when Pretest came out, that like, oh yeah, I got your record. Yeah, it sounds like you guys playing live or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, that was totally the point. But then I thought about it later once we were going to make the next one. I was like, yeah, maybe that's boring though, because I know it's more exciting to watch live than just to probably listen to, you know. So why not make a record that's a little bit different, has something a little bit different than what it is live. Still retains the live energy, but has some extra just something, you know, for headphones listeners.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what I noticed. I mean, as soon as Colin joined the band, I mean, I noticed that there was you definitely incorporated the more of the studio experimentation.
Yeah.
You know, the additional overdubs and
Yeah.
And now when Colin joined, because I mean, I'm trying to remember that time period too. Now, had you already been kind of, you guys had known each other beforehand, because he actually, he went out with you guys when you did pre-test with Albini, correct?
Yeah, he came along and just observed, because he was a student at NYU for recording engineering at the time. And Albini was one of his favorite engineers. So yeah, he came out and watched. So he was so sort of part of the band in some ways before he joined. You know, he had seen so many of our shows before that, you know, and was really familiar with our music. And
well, yeah, I was gonna say, and I felt like from a live perspective, I didn't feel like you guys missed a beat. You know, like it still kind of retained the same kind of energy that I remember seeing when Clayton was in the band too.
Yeah, that was a little bit. That was something I was a little bit concerned about at first. You know, was would it have the same live energy? Like, I knew that musically we could write amazing stuff together, but I was wondering if it would still have the energy live.
Mm-hmm.
And it did, but I don't think it did right away. I think it took some time to develop that as well too. You know,
well,
loosen up a bit. I think if I think about the first couple of shows, you know, or maybe the first couple of months of shows we did after Colin joined, I felt like it. You know, it took a while to kind of loosen up a bit. I feel like, you know, totally let loose. I mean, like, for instance, I remember Colin used to tie his hair back for the first couple of shows. You know, probably, you know, it was a lot of pressure on him probably too. To, you know, because at that time we were just playing, you know, old stuff mostly. You know, so he wanted to play the parts, right? You know, so.
Right, exactly. And well, the other interesting thing, and I think I noticed this too, is I always felt that, and I guess this probably stems from all the touring you did, because you guys had started touring with the band pretty early on.
Yeah.
And I always felt like you guys had a kind of a good mastery of not just, I mean, obviously not just the performance, but your sound in terms of, you know, because I always felt like the one example I always give to people is when I saw you guys play with with ISIS at the Middle East downstairs. This is after Colin joined.
Yeah, well, actually, that's one of the shows that I was just thinking about.
Oh, okay.
The ISIS tour was I think before the ISIS tour we only played one show with Colin at that point.
Oh,
locally in New York. So that was like that tour was kind of his first real experience with playing live with the band.
Well, you did a great job then. I remember that, but what I found was interesting was that the Middle East downstairs is notoriously a shitty sounding room to me. Like, in terms of it's gotten better, but like whoever was engineering the night, I mean, ISIS sounded so muddy.
Oh yeah.
And I think Big Business was on that tour, I think too. And
These Arms Are Snakes, I remember, was the other band.
Yes, yeah. And so the other bands were also very muddy, but I remember distinctly you guys took the stage and it was like the most clear, precise, you know, presentation, you know, as a no matter what, like I could hear everything perfectly, and I remember thinking these guys really have their shit together live wise.
I think it's easier though also when you're a trio, and that's another reason why I like being a trio, you know. It's interesting, you know, the second you add a second guitar or even just vocals, you know, it just adds a whole new complexity to trying to get a good mix live. Mm-hmm. I feel like especially with two guitars for some reason. So yeah, just being a drums, bass, guitar, instrumental trio. I mean, we're a sound guy's dream, you know. It's like most times, you know, when we're on tour and we're, the sound guy comes up to us and asks us, all right, guys, what do you need? Where do you want the vocal mic? And I tell them, oh, instrumental, drum, bass, guitar. Like, they're like, oh, awesome. They're just psyched because it makes their job easy, and it does help that, yeah, Jeff knows how to tune his drums, he knows how to make them sound good. Colin's, insane about tone and stuff, so I think for me though, I was kind of the last, to kind of know how to get a good tone out of the three of us.
Oh, I would never have noticed.
I mean, I probably had like a clear tone, but I don't think I had I listened to those, I don't know. I don't think it was until really the last record that I actually liked the way my guitar sounds. I mean, Psychic Maps is okay, but yeah, those first couple, oh man, those early records, I hate the way my guitar sounds now.
Oh wow.
I kind of just didn't know. I don't know. I didn't. I was just in this dumb effects processor, and I through like a solid state amp. It was just the worst setup, And I was I guess I was just kind of lazy. I don't know. I wasn't thinking so much about tone, I guess, so much. I knew that I didn't want it to sound super metal, Nowadays, I actually do want a lot of times. I think the material kind of is calling for more of a metallic sound at times,
Yeah, definitely.
But in the early days, I actually tried to purposely avoid that. I wanted to be a really aggressive, energetic band without being sounding metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I even wanted to play sort of like tech metal inspired riffs, but with a totally like twangy tone. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I guess with time it made sense to me. Now listening back to it, some of it kind of makes me cringe a little bit the way it actually sounds. But
is that why you kind of because for the longest time you were pretty much Strat only for your
yeah. And actually on the last record too was still a lot of Strat. I still played Strats live mainly, but I got that SG, and I started using that a little bit more. I bought the SG for Gorguts, but now with our studio records, I like to kind of mix the mixed tones more, I like to have some parts sound, with the Strat and sound really chewy and twangy, and then other parts, they kind of need that extra something. That's usually when I use the SG. But the next record that we're going to do is it's going to be all 12-string electric guitar.
Right. Yeah, I remember you busted out the 12-string at the last gig I saw you.
Yeah, I have like a cheap Schecter 12-string that I've been writing a lot of music on. That doesn't sound that great, but I'm in the process of getting a custom one made that hopefully will sound a lot better than that one.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and it's going to be totally weird. It's going to have the special tremolo unit on it that has a whammy bar. It's kind of like it's not a Bigsby, but it kind of looks like that. So I'm gonna I want to incorporate because I've never heard a 12-string guitar with a whammy bar. Like I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
So I really want the next record to sound a lot different.
Well, that brings up a good point because one of the things I've noticed over the years, and I can speak personally again and say that of a lot of guitar players. I mean, to me personally, you were very influential on me. Because when people ask me who my favorite guitar players are, not that a lot of people do, but if they do, your name always comes up in the conversation because I always thought that you're always trying to push not so much the limit, but you're always trying to create something new with the instrument, which I don't think a lot of guitar players do. And, like you said, incorporating the 12-string, putting in the tremolo, I mean, the alternate tunings, I mean, was that always a part of your style, or was that something that just kind of evolved over the last, 10 years or so?
I think the 12-string, I've always liked the sound of 12-string, even in high school, even on that demo my metal band did, there was some 12-string acoustic on it. But it wasn't until more recently, maybe in the past. Well, it's funny, I used that 12-string Schecter electric. I used that on Psychic Maps for a few songs, just as like an just to double some riffs, a weird octave effect, So even back then, I was actually wanting to use 12-string electric, but it wasn't until about a year and a half ago or something where I full on decided the next record. I mean, that's not going to be made that, if I do the next record all 12-string, it probably means if we do another one after that, it won't be that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. I kind of also feel like at this point too, this will be our seventh at least studio record. So you know, that's a lot of records now. So I don't want to. I want to keep pushing it forward and having each record sound be its own unique, have its own unique character and everything. And I feel like already, even just the material that we've written so far, already, even if it wasn't using this 12 string, it already sounds pretty different from any of the other ones. But it makes me even more excited to have that I'm going to have a totally new guitar, you know, and a totally different tone. Makes me even more excited about how it's going to turn out, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I get bored pretty quickly, you know. That's why I'm, again, with all the alternate tunings and just wanting to just try different things. I even want to try doing some prepared guitar stuff on the next Dysrhythmia too.
Yeah, well, yeah, because what I also noticed was, so around the time, Colin joined the band and everything, I think that's when you also kind of began really pushing a lot of your solo stuff too, correct? I mean, that's because that was after the Byla records.
Yeah, yeah.
And you've put out a couple solo records now since then, correct?
Yeah, before that I had just made this one little 3-song cassette in '97.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting though is that last year on Bandcamp I released this sort of collection of 4-track demos. All around the time I had made that 3-song cassette, so like between 1996 and '98. Because I had kind of forgotten, once my 4-track broke, which was like in '99 or something, I forgot that I had all these tapes until last year of all this material that was kind of, that I had written for another solo record. I just totally, I think once Dysrhythmia started, I just put all that stuff away. I just forgot about it completely. Yeah. I never even tried to finish it. So I was starting to go through all these boxes of tapes, and I found these little 4-track tapes, and I started listening to them and ready to just like cringe and throw them in the garbage, you know. And I listened to some of it and I was like, wow, it was kind of interesting hearing it, because I didn't even remember any of this. Like, it wasn't even me, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it wasn't perfect, and it sounded really murky and stuff. But at the same time, I thought, oh, this would be kind of cool to release. I don't know, just to put it out there. It was supposed to be another solo record. It's material that, you know, after listening to it, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna. It's so old now. I'm not going to try to refigure this out and re-record it and everything. I'm just going to put it out in its raw form. You know, I thought it was kind of an interesting little documentation of that time, you know. But really, actually, the reason why there wasn't much solo material, though, otherwise, was, I don't know, for a long time, I found it really hard to finish any ideas that I was writing for solo guitar. And then all of a sudden, around 2007, I think it's because I started using GarageBand. You know, I started recording. I was able to record ideas myself, digitally and stuff. And that suddenly I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? Because it was such a great writing tool, also. So then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I had all this solo material ready for an album, you know. And then it's kind of continued since then. I've had a lot more inspiration, a lot more ideas. Even still, like I could put out so much more than I have. I have so many. I have so much solo material right now, just kind of sitting around. It kind of worries me, because I feel like if I'm just gonna like either forget about it or forget how to play it, or just never. I don't know. I have a lot of stuff sitting around, but I don't want to put too much stuff out at once, because then it just things get kind of overlooked, you know.
Yeah. Well, as you've been demoing ideas in GarageBand, I'm hoping that you. Unlike me, you've learned a good naming convention for your songs so that you can easily remember them.
No, I'm still pretty bad at that. Actually, yeah.
Because I know mine are. If you look in my folder, it's like new idea
Yeah.
1,
Yeah.
new idea with 2 A's.
Yes, I do the same. Yeah. Yeah.
And I forget my alternate tunings like all the time.
One thing I have started doing in the past couple of years that saves me a lot of grief when trying to remember what an idea was, is I open up my photo booth on my laptop, and I always start with, every time I record a new idea, with playing each string open on my guitar, you know, so I can always reference that at least, you know.
Oh, that's a great idea. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I always do that first, you know, even though I do try to write down the tuning, it's always easy to lose it or something. So yeah, so I just play every string open, and then I record myself playing the idea, just so that I can reference it later if I forget, you know. That's been a handy tool also.
Yeah.
That's something I've been telling, because I teach guitar too, and that's something I've been telling my students as well to start doing, when they get discouraged, about not being able to finish an idea or, forgetting an idea easily or whatever. I'm like, man, it's so easy just to open up photo booth, just record yourself. Like, just record a video of yourself playing it,
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah. And also for me, just demoing stuff, because before that I was just, besides the 4-track, I was good with it with the 4-track for a while, putting my ideas down on the 4-track. Then once the 4-track, in between the time the 4-track was broken and before I started using digital recording programs, I just, I was just using my stupid boombox, to record ideas, and stuff would get so lost so easily that way. And it's kind of funny actually. Colin kind of rescued a song that when he first joined Dysrhythmia, I gave him a shitty sounding boombox tape of the song, of like a basement recording with Clayton of the song Bypass the Solenoid, which was on Barriers. Because that was all we had as a reference for Colin to try to learn what Clayton's bass part was, was this kind of crappy sounding basement recording of us rehearsing that song. Mm-hmm. So I gave him the tape just to learn that song. And then, he just kept listening to what else was on the tape, and I didn't even know what, it was all. I thought the rest of the tape was just crap, or whatever. And he ended up finding the song Sleep Decayer on there, which I had completely forgotten about, actually. So that was the song we were working on with Clayton, too. And I kind of forgot about it. And they ended up, finding it. And it's like, what's this other idea you guys were working on? I was like, oh, I forgot about that, and it ended up being like one of our cooler songs, I thought, it almost just kind of got totally forgotten.
And then in the realm of your solo stuff, so what inspired you to do the ukulele thing?
Really, it was just I bought the instrument on a whim just because it looked like something easy to travel with, and I thought like, oh, this would be good, something to just kind of keep my fingers busy if if I'm traveling and I don't, but or taking a vacation and I don't want to bring a guitar with me. It's so it was kind of the portability of the small instrument that it first wanted me to just purchase it, and also it was just really cheap. It was like $90, you know. But then after a few years after that of doing solo acoustic guitar shows, where I was usually carrying around 2 to 3 guitars with me, you know, to play these solo shows, just because of all the different tunings and stuff. I looked at the uke one day and I was like, man, if I could just write at least 30 minutes worth of music on this instrument, it'd be so easy to go play shows on this instrument, you know? So I kind of just, that was the initial reason, you know. I thought, let's see if I can do this, you know. And then once I had my first song, I was like, oh, cool. And then after that, it's like a flood of material just after that, you know. I'm still like writing new songs on an instrument like almost every day, you know.
Well, I like it because, I mean, the record you did, Ashland, right? That's the name.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been bad about remembering album titles for these interviews. So, but I was listening to it the other day, and I mean, the thing I love about it is I think in the last couple of years, you know, the ukulele has kind of been this kind of symbol of, you know, like this kind of cheesy folk revival.
Yeah, you know, and you know, it's funny because I kind of I wasn't like completely unaware of that, you know, when I started writing music for that instrument, and then when I started posting those YouTube videos, you know, or whatever that I was doing for a while, I kind of had no idea that was sort of going on, you know, and then I realized it. I was like, oh, that sucks, you know. I take this instrument like pretty seriously, and I'm writing, you know, kind of this dark sounding music on it, you know, and it's kind of, the instrument's kind of viewed as a joke, you know. But sorry, go on.
Oh, well, no, I was gonna say that I think, you know, whenever I see like, I think I remember seeing like an ad somewhere, and I was like, oh, see this guy, the, you know, noted ukulele player or something like that. And I'm just kind of like, I really wish Kevin would get more notoriety, because I think you do amazing things with, like, you know, for anybody who hasn't heard it, I mean, the music you do on the ukulele does not sound like one would expect a ukulele album to sound, because you treat it almost like a classical guitar.
Yeah, and yeah, technically it's a baritone ukulele, so it's it's, you know, it's bigger than a normal one. So, and I string it with heavier strings, and I also use I use a couple different tunings on that, but they're all kind of based around this one particular tuning, and it's a pretty low tuning. So, you know, yeah, it has a deeper, fuller sound. So to a lot of people, it sounds like a classical guitar or something. And that's kind of the way I play it. I just play it like I play it finger style, like I would play a classical guitar, you know. And the music I write for it sounds probably very classical guitarish, you know, at times.
Did you study classical guitar?
Yeah, I did privately. Yeah. Not in school, but outside of school. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then, so, all right, so you had Dysrhythmia, you had Byla, and then the solo stuff came out, and then how did Vaura come about? I don't think I've ever actually asked Toby this.
Yeah, I remember that came about. I was just at a show one night at this place, Lit Lounge. Maybe you've been there.
Yeah.
They used to always do. Yeah, I used to have a metal Monday night metal shows thing there. Anyway, I was there. I guess this is sometime in 2009. Yeah. I was at the show seeing a band, and I ran into my friend Lev, who plays drums in Kralis. And we're talking, and he introduces me to Josh, you know, and who I didn't know at the time. But right after talking to him, I realized that, like, wait, I don't know this guy, but I had seen him before. I saw his old band open for another band I had gone to see only a few months prior to that. And so, yeah, Lev introduced me to Josh, and we just started talking. And right away, we were like talking about all this different kinds of music. You know, we were kind of just surprised, I think, that one another like knew, oh, you know that record, you know that record too? That's like so different from that other record, you know, like just talking about all different kinds of music, metal, and then other stuff completely, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty quickly into our conversation, he had mentioned that he kind of had this collection of songs that didn't really fit in with his other bands. And at first, I think he was thinking he wanted to make a solo record. So at first he just asked me to give him some feedback. He was just like, hey, I just like your feedback on these songs. Just tell me if you like them or not or whatever. It wasn't even like let's form a band so much, you know. So I was like, yeah, sure, send me your songs, I'll listen to them, So he did, and but I think in his message maybe he said something like, well, if you like these songs, it'd be cool if you could play guitar on it. So then I was just thinking like, oh, maybe it'd be like a session thing, you know what I mean? If I like these songs, I'll play guitar on this record,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember like listening to the songs. I was like, well, I actually really like this. It's cool, And then I asked him, I said, do you have, because the demo was all, it was drum machine and stuff. I said, do you have a drummer, and he was already playing with Charlie and Religious to Damn, and yeah, I don't think we ever tried to find another drummer. I think, right from the beginning, he was like, yeah, I play with this guy, Charlie. He's great. I can bring him in to practice. We'll get a room and work on some of these songs. So yeah, pretty quickly he brought Charlie to rehearsal space, and right away we just hit it off, and, but we didn't have a bass player for, I would say a good 6 months, but, before we got Toby involved. I kind of always had, in my mind, I always kind of wanted to do some music with Toby somewhere down the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think what it was I think I saw Tartar Lamb at Silent Barn around the beginning of early 2010 or something. And, that was when Toby was primarily just playing bass, and he was using, that chorus pedal and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this is exactly like the kind of bass sound I think would work well with Vaura, and I knew that Toby too, doing a lot of experimental music on his own, and I always saw sort of a correlation between KO Dot and Dysrhythmia, even though we sound completely different. We're both sort of still in that same world of don't really fit in, sort of metal but not really, kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I always knew that, I kind of always thought it would be cool to have a band that was totally different than Dysrhythmia and was a little bit more like song oriented, quote unquote, and stuff. But really, I was always like, well, I could never find a good singer, and I really like Josh's voice, and I was kind of thinking, I was just thinking like, yeah, Toby might be into this too. He might want to do something totally different as well, So, so I just asked Toby, and he came into the rehearsal space, and again, it just worked. So it's pretty easy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean the Vaura records are incredible. I was I was actually telling the last person I was interviewing. I said I think I should just rename this podcast the Greg Massey hour-long compliment hour or compliment hour, because I feel like all I do is say, "Hey, you did this really awesome record. I don't know if you know this, but so I try to not go over the top with it, but yeah, no, I mean the Dysrhythmia stuff, the Bila, I remember Bila was one of the few albums that got me through my mundane office job in 2006. I remember that, and well, yeah, and I just know from talking with you and talking with Josh and Charlie, I mean, there is like this sort of, well, I mean, we had that long ass conversation about Queensryche.
Yeah.
So there is that camaraderie that I think really comes out in Vaura too.
Yeah, I mean we have that's kind of that might be something I kind of share with those guys in that band that I don't necessarily share with any of the other people I play with, maybe. Is because we're all like pretty much exactly the same age, you know what I mean? And kind of just had very similar I don't want to say upbringings, but discovered all these different things kind of around the same time, you know what I mean? So it's like when we talk about music, we all kind of remember discovering certain things at the same time in our lives, and then having a similar impact on us equally, you know what I mean? And so yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about that band, and it's pretty eclectic, but like what we're trying to do, but we don't want it to sound like herky jerky and jumping all around and stuff. We wanted to use those eclectic influences more subliminally or whatever,
Yeah. And I mean, this question can also go towards the Gorguts side of thing, which I'm going to get to in a second. But um, did you find it easy to kind of adjust your guitar style to, like you said, with two guitar players,
Mhm.
to the more band oriented, or I mean, I shouldn't say band oriented, the song oriented band
Uh,
with a vocalist. Was that an easy transition for you?
you mean going into Gorguts?
Well, going into Vaura first of
Oh,
all.
yeah, because with Vaura, it's to me it's like to me it was like, wow, this music it's pretty simple and catchy and fun. I mean, there's still like a lot of subtleties to it that make it interesting, I think. But for me, after playing with Dysrhythmia for so long, where it's just like, oof, it's like a lot. You know what I mean? When you're playing, it's nice to have something like that Vaura, where it's more like when I'm playing, I can kind of listen. I can almost listen more to the whole band while I'm playing, not be so focused on myself,
Yeah.
and what I have to do. So that's kind of nice. So no, it wasn't a hard transition. It was pretty easy,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then going into Gorguts,
Yeah.
because I remember when you kind of broke the news to me. You said, "Hey, this isn't official yet, but Colin and I are joining Gorguts." I mean, how exactly did it come about? I don't think I know the story.
Well, it was Luke sent me a message through MySpace, actually, because it was back in 2008. Yeah, he just sent me a message saying like, "Hey, I'm thinking about reforming Gorguts. I want to have you and Colin on board if you want to be part of it. Write me back and let me know. So I was like, what the hell? The last thing I expected to get. Because I'd never met or talked to Luke or anything before that.
And you were a Gorguts fan.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many times before Luke contacted us, where Colin and I would talk about Gorguts, and even when we were writing Dysrhythmia songs, we'd always be like, oh, this is the Gorguts part, this is the Gorguts riff, So they were just one of those bands we were always talking about and referencing and stuff all the time, So it was kind of no brainer for me and Colin, once we believed it was actually a real message. Yeah, we wrote back and we're like, sure, because I think he also said too he had some material, so we're like, yeah, send us something, let's see what this is like, So.
And within the context of the music, I mean, were you guys kind of brought in to add something to the music, or was it that he had written this music and he just knew you guys would be capable of playing it live, or was it a little bit of both?
I mean, he I guess he ended up, just kind of having a lot of, I guess, just having a lot of faith and trust in us, before really knowing us very well. I mean, all he had to reference was just, the music we did in our other bands, really, but I guess like that's like, with anything, asking someone new to join your band when you're only, before you've actually tried to write music together, it's always kind of a gamble, even if they're like an amazing player, and even if you go along with them as a person, So, even before, even after he asked us to join and we said yes, I was still thinking at the time, well, this is not like, we'll see how this goes. I don't want to get my hopes up too much. Let's see how we write together. And then luckily, I mean, I remember him sending the first song and listening to it, and right away I was like, oh yeah, I hear some stuff. You know what I mean? And I don't know what he was expecting me to do. I don't know if he was expecting me to just kind of learn his part and just double a lot of stuff and not write so much of my own lines. I don't really remember. I don't remember him giving me any instruction. He just kind of sent me the song and was like, here's the tabs for it. You can learn it if you want, to see what I'm doing. Right away when I listened to it, I heard like, right away I could tell like, okay, here's the riff I want to double. Here's the riff I want to write something different for. And I came up with something like pretty fast, and I sent it back to him, and we hardly changed a note with any of the songs. It was a very natural, kind of easygoing writing process, actually.
Okay, so it was kind of a collaboration on the song.
It was really collaborative. For there's 9 songs on the record. One of them's that string piece. So there's 6 metallic songs. 6 heavy songs, or 6 that Luke wrote, and then I wrote 1 and Colin wrote 1. So that makes 8 of them. And the songs that me and Colin wrote, those were like some of the last songs, I guess, to be written for the record. Because at first I think Luke was, he said this in interviews, I think too. At first he was thinking, he was going to write all of the songs. We would write our own parts, but he would basically he would start the songs and finish them, himself. But I think Colin just, it was kind of funny. Both of us Luke didn't ask us to write songs. We both just kind of, I think, came up with some riffs on our own. And I know for me, I just came up with like the riffs for Absconders. And I was like, this doesn't sound like a Dysrhythmia song. You know what I mean? This sounds like it should be a death metal song. But it wasn't like I sat down and tried to write that. It's just like those riffs just came out of me one day when I was just sitting down watching TV with my guitar or something, So, and then it was funny because around the same time, Colin experienced that something similar too, where he was just kind of, I think, writing and was like, this could be a Gorguts song, probably, So both of us sent our ideas to Luke, and he ended up loving them. And he said too, like, I think he was thinking after working on like 6 of songs with him, I think at that point he trusted us like as well to contribute our own songs. Like he knew that they would be good and they would fit in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's how that works.
Okay, and within the confines of the Gorguts material, as opposed to, obviously your own solo stuff. I mean, is it? Do you do a lot of the alternate tunings or anything like that, or is it?
Of course, with my song Absconders, it's in a totally different tuning than the rest of the record. But again, that I don't think I would have maybe intentionally had done that if I did sit down with the guitar and was thinking like, oh, I'm going to write a song for the Gorguts records. I think I probably would have wanted to make it a little bit easier on myself, just to try to write a song in C standard like the rest of the material is,
Mm-hmm.
But since I wrote that song without knowing it was going to be a Gorguts song at first, that's why it was in an alternate tuning. Because it was in a tuning that I already had my guitar set up for a Dysrhythmia song. So,
okay.
But like I said, when I came with that riff, I knew it it just seemed to fit more for Gorguts. It sounded like it should have brutal vocals over it and stuff, But yeah, so for Gorguts, it's interesting though because we the guitars are tuned to down to C, standard tuning, but just all the way down to C.
Mm-hmm.
But Luke plays a 7-string, so he's got this extra G on the bottom that I don't have because I play 6. I still play my 6-string. So it's kind of interesting because he's got a 7-string, I got a 6-string, both tuned down to C. But then Colin, he plays a 6-string bass in standard A440 tuning. So he's totally in a different tuning than us, So he's got different open strings, which can make that makes for a lot of interesting harmony and stuff, harmonic possibilities and voicings and stuff.
Okay. And did you find that because he just kind of assembled this lineup of Gorguts, so you got you and Colin, and then who's playing drums for you now?
Well, John left, but John played on the record. John Longstreth from Jim. Him and John had already they already knew each other and stuff, better than Colin and I knew Luke. So with John, it was more like they had a little bit more of a history together, before he asked them to join. So yeah, but yeah, it was really easy working with John too. His playing on that record, I think it shocked a lot of people. It was really different from what he's known for with Origin and stuff.
Okay. And so as a live entity, I mean, it's been a couple of years now. I mean, I know you did you did some shows in 2010, and I mean, the record just came out last year. I mean, have you? How has it been like becoming a live unit with the rest of the guys? Does it feel like not like a normal band, but
I don't know. I know what you mean because I mean the first the first couple years of playing live before the new album was out, we were playing some of those Colored Sand songs, but for the most part, we were only like 2 or 3 of them the most, and still we were playing them instrumentally for the most part. So the bulk of the material was old stuff, during those years. So on one hand, it almost felt like it still kind of felt like being in a tribute band or something. You know what I mean? because you know, it wasn't until after the new record came out that people finally heard like, oh, this is the new lineup doing their thing, you know what I mean? Playing their material that they wrote together. Then now, like when we tour now and we play, like, you know, for the most part, when we do our headlining sets, we just play the whole new album pretty much, you know? So now it feels different now, you know what I mean? It feels more like, yeah, we're like you said, we're a band, you know, now.
And how was it adjusting to death metal death metal festivals and
Yeah, the festival experiences are pretty kind of new to me, and I don't know. I mean, I've had some experience, but you know, I guess Dysrhythmia has played festivals before, but not like this, you know, and not as many, you know, and not the size of some of these like we're playing now, you know.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely took some getting used to. I think I'm kind of a little bit used to it now. It's kind of all about just getting a good monitor mix, you know. That's what it kind of. That's what I realized, you know. It's like at first you get really, you know, at least I did get really intimidated going out on some of these stages in front of all these people, you know, at some of these outdoor fests. And usually at the festival, you don't have much time, you know, to get set up and start playing and get it to sound good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a good learning experience, you know, learning how to deal with that. And now I feel like we kind of know, you know, now we're smart enough to know what we need in our monitors at every show, you know, and we just write it down for the monitor guy, you know, and so that way we hand a dude a sheet of paper when we go up there, and if they're good, it's usually just kind of already set, you know, and then we can just go, because that's what it's all about for me. If my monitors are fine, then I'm not nervous at all. It's like everything's fine, you know. It's only when it sounds bad that I start getting worried, you know, and playing those kind of shows, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, that's cool. I mean, I'm happy that it's going well for you too, because I mean, you and Colin are two of my favorite people that I've had the pleasure of meeting and working with and playing shows with over the last 14 years or whatever.
Yeah,
yeah, it seems like it's been a while.
I was trying to find that. I think I still have a flyer or post. Actually, it was a poster of the show.
Oh, the UPenn show.
Yeah, I think this was at the Rotunda. I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think I still have that somewhere. I should try to dig it up.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, yeah. I was just like, yeah, these guys are cool.
I just get so into the Maudlin of the Well, records at that time, the Leaving Your Body Map and Bath.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but I mean, but no, I mean, it's nice for me to see, people I know who, in addition to just being amazing people, really good people, and good musicians, and I like seeing good things happen to you guys because I mean, it makes me happy. Makes me happy. And one thing I was going to kind of end on was I wasn't sure how to broach this question in previous interviews, but for you, I think I might be able to say it better. But if you could name because one, and especially from conversations we've had, I like when musicians who you can tell they're very passionate about music and just are really attentive, they can really go kind of to nerdy lengths about specific recordings and things like that. I was wondering, can you name a couple holy fuck moments from different albums that kind of either influenced you or kind of got your brain working to kind of help develop what became of your sound?
Yeah, I did. I did an article recently for the Decibel blog website.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of something like that, where I just kind of I picked up a bunch of songs that I remember hearing, for the first time, just and sort of having a huge impression on me, and thus affecting the way I play or viewed music at that time. So I guess some of those. I mean, there's so many. I guess a few that stand out. I mean, one, it sounds cheesy to say it, but one that really does stand out is the first time I heard Obscura by Gorguts, actually.
Mm-hmm.
That was way before I joined the band. Up until that point, they were just pretty much, viewed as just kind of a straight, pretty much just a traditional death metal band, and I remember working at a record store at the time that record came out, and yeah, it came into the store, and I was like, you know, I had read some reviews of it, and they were mostly negative reviews, actually, like before actually buying the record. But I didn't care, you know. I was like, it still sounded like it could be pretty interesting to me, you know. So I remember getting that record and then going home and putting it on the stereo, and just the second I hit play and that first riff starts, I was like, whoa. And actually, you know, another moment I remember actually too was I think right around that same time, maybe a year later, I bought Calculating Infinity by the Dillinger Escape Plan. And I have to say, I do remember that too. I remember putting on like another record I kind of bought out of curiosity. I don't think I knew much about them, only word of mouth. And yeah, hitting play and being like, what the hell? You know, it's just so chaotic, you know. So those are two that I remember like specifically, you know. It's interesting though, because some of the most influential stuff on me ended up working its kind of magic on me more slowly. You know what I mean? Like a band like Voivod, for instance. Like I love, and they're super influential. Like Piggy's guitar playing was super influential on me, but it wasn't. That was a case of something that I didn't actually like at first or understand. I think, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, I didn't. I just when I first heard it, I was like, okay. Even at that time, I knew like, okay, there's something here, and that's interesting. That's going on, but I don't know if I'm ready for it, you know. So I'm not gonna totally write this off, but I'm gonna like investigate it later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's those kind of bands too that ended up having a huge effect on me, but it wasn't something where like the first time I heard it, it blew my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes.
Too, you know, because actually then there's probably other stuff I feel like too over time that the first time I heard it I was like whoa, but then it didn't hold up. You know what I mean? Because there's music like that too that can sometimes kind of blow you away at first, or like something you really love at first, but it's almost like candy. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, this tastes great, you know, but then after like a while you're like, oh, I'm sick of this, you know.
Yeah.
There's that kind of stuff too, you know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I always find that the music that kind of sticks with me for, you know, it's usually the stuff that I don't like at first.
Yeah.
It's usually, you know, something that kind of reveals itself to me after a while. So, you know, kind of like what you're saying with Voivod too. I mean,
and then, there's stuff too that you know, you know, I guess like when I'm talking about, when I was mentioning like Dillinger and Gorguts and stuff, I mean those are examples of music that like they made an impression on me because the first time I heard them it just sounded so abrasive and chaotic and thus like exciting to me at that time. But also there's stuff too that made a big impression on me, but not because it was like crazy or anything. You know, there's more like subtle music like Cocteau Twins and stuff like that. Some of that more those bands that kind of use guitar more for atmosphere and stuff.
mm-hmm.
Those were I remember that too. Actually, that's another buying the record Treasure by Cocteau Twins when I was in high school. I think it was one of those things I bought because I was already into bands like Dead Can Dance and stuff, and I think it was just I was kind of just investigating more stuff on that record label. You know what I mean? You know, because this is before like it was so easy to before the internet, before it was so easy to just go to YouTube and hear something instantly. You know, it was more. There's more a time where like you found a record that you liked and then you're like, what label is this on? You know, and usually if it was a smaller underground or independent record label, you kind of knew like, oh, this label probably has like an aesthetic or something that they probably have more stuff that I'd be into. So I'm going to kind of investigate the label itself and see what else they did. You know what I mean? So then you would just kind of catalog or something. And that's how I ended up getting the Cocteau Twins, I think. And, yeah, so right away I liked the music itself, but then once I started to really listen to the guitar, what the guitar player was doing, you know, I got super inspired by that too. You know, I was like, wow, this is so cool. Because up until that point, I was, you know, just listening to a lot of like more shreddy guitar types of stuff, you know, and classical stuff too, you know, but still like very kind of like lots of notes, you know what I mean? So to hear this person playing guitar, like making it sound like an orchestra, you know, or just like walls of keyboards, you know, I thought that was pretty awesome, you know.
Well, I can see how that kind of played out a little bit in, you know, how it came out in your own guitar playing too. And I think one of the funny things is that anybody who listens to your Dysrhythmia records and the solo records and everything like that, I mean, truth be told, if we put you in like a traditional metal band and had you like solo over diatonic E minor kind of thing, you
Mm.
would probably put out a ripping guitar solo. Like I think a lot of people maybe don't realize like you have those abilities, but you don't you don't bring them out as much. I know.
I don't, but it's funny you mentioned that because yeah, I've done some work with this band Sabbath Assembly, some studio work with them on their last couple of records, and they're kind of more the stuff they've done so far is a bit more like psychedelic rock, dark folk kind of thing. But I'm working with them now on their next album, which is actually going to be pretty metal and pretty early, more like traditional metal. Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be totally retro and just, you know what I mean. But it's still, I don't know. So far, I've done some pre-production demos for it, and they actually want me to do a lot of guitar solos, and I've been having a blast with it. And it's funny because like the chord progressions are kind of, you know, they're tonal and stuff, you know what I mean, and they're pretty like rocking, you know. And I've been having a blast like just doing all these harmony solos and stuff, just kind of going back a little bit more to my early roots, you know, of that kind of 80s metal stuff, but early 80s, you know, more like Scorpions or Riot or like King Diamond, Merciful Fate, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. Well, I mean,
Maybe people will hear some more stuff like that from me if you know if that ends up making the record, you know, in the end.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, I guess that's really all the quote unquote questions I had. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you're one of my favorite guitar players, so it was a good chance for me to pick your brain.
Cool. Yeah, it's fun.
And I guess the question is, well, where can people find all your material? 'Cause
There isn't really one place for everything. I would say just go to my Bandcamp page. That's got all my solo stuff on there, and then for anything else, just use Google.
yeah, Google.
All sorts of stuff out there. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time. And hopefully next time I'm in New York, we'll talk again.